Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. I left a comment on a video done by Nicole at Noteworthy Fiction. She had just finished reading the Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde and did not come away from that book reeling with unbridled enthusiasm. She liked the book, but she had reservations, and I commented that that had been my experience with the book as well, which I read so long ago. And she asked me what other sorts of his writings would I recommend. She seemed inclined to go to the plays, and I realized when I saw her question, I did not answer it immediately because I needed to think about it. And then I never really got back to it. So time has kind of gotten rushed here. I will be heading down real soon to Indiana to see the solar eclipse. By the time this video goes up, the solar eclipse shall have transpired. But I thought it might be fair for me to just try to give some thoughts about Wilde verbally, because it might require multiple paragraphs to try to write everything down. So years ago I read this. It's been a long while since I've read Oscar Wilde, and this is a very nice edition of The Complete Wilde, and I think I have read everything except for his stories, which were oftentimes like fables or fairy tales, which he devised for his children, and I really should get to those one of these days. Some people have said they are absolutely wonderful and marvelous, but I have not read those, so I cannot speak for them. As for his plays, of course, his plays are wonderful. If you like light and trivial fare, I suppose, the importance of being earnest and Lady Windermere's Fan, I think, are the main ones. I've never seen. Sorry. I've never seen Salome performed. I would like to, but I think I've read everything, and I am a big fan of his drama, and I thought I should just look at this and see what we have now. As far as his now, come on, dude. Come on, I don't need you to do that. Come on. Sorry. This is with an introduction by Vivian Holland, which was Oscar Wilde's son. You know, sometimes you want to just kick them out of the room. Okay, so it starts with stories, then it has plays, and it has everything, of course, and there are... Come on, dude. Okay, I think that's it, my boy. Oh. Sorry about that. Sometimes that's the only recourse. So let me see. Where was I? So yeah, edited with just with an introduction by Vivian Holland. So there's a lot more plays than I remember. Of course, I remember better the ones that I have seen. And then as far as the poems, I forget it just has poems here. I don't see the title for that. I thought it was a complete last book of poems that he did. They don't seem to have that separated out. They're just all together here. I've read all of them, and I think I've read well, there is the Ballad of Reading Jail, but I thought it came in a volume. As far as his poetry, I have met people who love that final book of his, love that poem. Each man kills the thing he loves, I think it was. And I judge poetry primarily as a poet, and I don't think his poetry is the best. It may be very praiseworthy in other aspects, such as its psychological portrait, but that I can't speak to. So the poetry I would not recommend right off. But as I say, I've known people, and it's more than one, who loved his poetry. So I would not be the person to dissuade anybody. So granted, the first couple of big plays are important, and then you get some of his prose works, and what I really loved of Wilde mainly were his great prose dialogues. He had The Decay of Lying, The Critic as Artist. Those were the two that I liked the best. And he had The Soul of Man Under Socialism. I like those the best. I think I came upon them in a Penguin edition. This pretty much has them, and I had them in also a Penguin edition that was different to this one, and I can't remember how. I don't seem to have it anymore. I must have given it up when I got this. But I think The Decay of Lying is my favorite. It's been so long. You know, one of the sadnesses of growing old, unless one is a prodigious reader, you realize that you will probably never retouch one of your favorite authors again, because the time that you have is just limited. I may, however, touch some aspects of Wilde that I never did before, such as his letters. Now, I've read De Profundis, and this is also a marvelous work. I loved this. I've read it a couple of times, and I think in our time there is available a completely unexpurgated version of it, and I don't know anymore if I was ever able to figure it out where you can access this kind of stuff. It's the same as with the thing by Hemingway, A Movable Feast. There exists an unexpurgated version, but knowing which is which and where to come across it, and I couldn't say anymore, and nor is it a pressing concern for me because I don't have the time left. But these for me would be my starting ground with Oscar Wilde, but they are not fiction. An argument could be made about the dialogues, to be sure, in the same sense that the dialogues of Plato are fiction. But that's not where I care to go. So the stories might be a good place for somebody who is especially interested in the fiction. Especially in Nicole's case, I know that she likes stories such as the Arabian Nights, and I would guess that his stories being sort of like fairy tales or fables, would have that kind of primordial thrust, that primordial importance that you want from that kind of literature. So I don't know. The answer is, particularly to Nicole, I don't really know what to suggest, and I'm sorry that I didn't get back to you any sooner. Now I will just go off and talk a little bit more about Oscar Wilde. Years ago, I was in the position of reading this book. I had a job I had to do where I was able to do some side reading, and I got this book from the library and read it all the way through. And then sometime later, I picked up my own copy of it, foolishly believing that I would go back one day. It's really hard to go back to things when time is moving at the clip that it is. But I vaguely had ideas that I might like to write some kind of play about Wilde. I had done a play about the trial of Jomo Kenyatta, and I thought that maybe I could consider doing one about the trial of Oscar Wilde. I thought it would be very interesting. Somewhere here, this is the real trial of Oscar Wilde. This is a transcript of the trial, and it is edited by Merlin Holland, which is the grandson of Oscar Wilde. And I read at least one other book by Merlin Holland. It was interesting because his father was born somewhat late, and then his father didn't have him until very late. He was an old man by the time Merlin was born. And so somehow 100 years after the demise of Oscar Wilde, you still had a living, breathing son. And he wrote interesting stuff about his grandfather. I'm sure that I read this at the time, and I don't remember it all that well. As I say, the trial, the life of Wilde have been done to death, so to speak. I've seen more than one play about them, and I don't think I ever really seriously considered the project, but I was interested, and I came across this. H. Montgomery Hyde is a very interesting writer. He wrote on a lot of different things, and I have several of his books in my eternal TBR pile, TBR being to be read, my unread books, which I have long had designs upon but never been able to accomplish because of my poor reading habits. Unfortunately, I keep finding new things that I want to read. But so there was this, and there were at least a couple of Oscar biographies he did. Oscar Wilde is one, and then Oscar Wilde, The Aftermath. And I am pretty sure that I read both of these. I'm not a big biography fan, as you know. Biography at its best is essentially gossip, unless it's biography about, say, a figure and his historical times, that sort of thing. But I don't mind gossip when it's a writer that I really like. I've read biographies of writers that I really like, or some other figure as well. I'm not I'm not at all opposed to gossip. So I'm sure I've read these and don't remember them. And my regret is that I can't show you the last. Well, it's not the last, but the one book that I read that I really liked, which focused exclusively upon his time in Paris at the end of his life. It was a very, very nicely done treatment. There's nice things about that in Merland Howard's book too. I forget if it was the one about his father, son of Wilde, I think, or a different one. Those were things I was getting from the library at the time I was on this job, and was never picking them up since, because the interest had waned in the topic. And of course I read this. This is very well known. I've forgotten a lot, but I probably still retain the gist of Wilde's story. Now, two books which are lovely books, which I have never gotten into, were these selections. I've got the Selected Letters of Oscar Wilde. This is a beautiful, pristine hardback, and then there is a sequel to it, More Letters of Oscar Wilde. And I would imagine there have been some better treatments done since. There is just, I received word, special word from Hannah at Hannah's Books, that there is a new edition of the Letters of Emily Dickinson coming out in April. And it's been a tug of war in my breast whether I should place a pre-order for that book or just wait a little while, wait a couple of years, so that I can just pick one up at less cost. If I got the pre-order and got the brand new copy, I would be sorely tempted to drop everything else and just read Emily Dickinson. And so I have not made up my mind. I don't know whether my cheapness will win out or my curiosity, though it's not 100% cheapness alone, because I do have other projects that I want to prioritize in my future reading plans, and things such as this solar eclipse and other events upcoming really are going to be impinging upon those plans. I am in the midst of Les Mis by Victor Hugo, and stumbling along. It will take me longer than I would like. But I believe this has the letter De Profundis in here. And I don't remember where I read that. If I read it in this, or I read it in that, or I read it, I don't think I read it from that Penguin copy that I have, but I really don't know. Or probably from that complete edition that I had, but I don't. I would advise anybody who wants to read that letter that they should really take some pains to search out the completest version that you can. So those are my collection of Wilde books. It degenerated into a show and tell, which I haven't done for a while, but I thought that I would. As I say, Oscar Wilde is one of those authors that, in my case, I came to love dearly, and it is with a tinge of regret, if not more than a tinge of regret, that I will likely never read his works again. I might go back to The Decay of Lying or those essays again if I can. And the letters probably deserve looking at, but as you know, my interest in biography is not strong, and I don't know how much I need the information that they would contain, but you have that exquisite personality and pen of Oscar Wilde, so that pulls strongly in favor of reading them. But then, in that case, well, maybe I should rather find a newer volume of his letters. In my case, I probably don't need it, but these are just random thoughts about one of the greats of English literature. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.